going to jump right into our AI panel. We're going to have Ahmer join the Kai again, and Adrian Funketchi grad school. And we're going to have Marisa Zalabak join, who works at that high-level institutions, which for me very rare to find someone working at that level with AI or folks on AI working at that level. And then, as dear friend, Saraf is a leader at Education Technology. Well, we shall trade her and her plus. Because we've heard from Ahmer and Kai, I wanted first to invite Marisa and Vriti to introduce themselves.
Marisa Zalabak, I'm an AI ethicist, and I'm somewhat of an anomaly in the AI world. I'm a psychologist. It's rare when I first came into AI, which is not as long as Kai, certainly, but 10 years. So it's not because it was flavor of the month. And I was invited in because I asked an enormous amount of ethics questions. I had been in social justice work. I had been doing restorative circles, so communication and real listening. But I was asked because I was asking about whose ethics. I was asking this. I was asked to join to contribute, which I did, to the first standard for the design of AI related to human well-being. And that's with IEEE. For those of you who don't know it, IEEE is the largest engineering organization in the world. Again, I was asked when I first came in, why are you even here? I told them to ask me in a month. When I asked in a month, they said they got it. But basically, I'm concerned with the humans. I'm concerned with how humans are interacting with the technology. We are technology in the same way that we are nature. So I come from a transdisciplinary background, and I'll go more into it after that. That's just the introduction to who I am.
Awesome. My name is Vriti Saraf. I'm the CEO and co-founder of an education nonprofit that helps educators learn about emerging technology through the context of research-based pedagogy. I'm also accompanied by a human that I'm incubating, which is a new project, I suppose. And just, I think what's really interesting about the through lines here is that we're all thinking about AI from the perspective of what AI can really do for humans, not what humans can optimize with AI. I think oftentimes, especially in education, and my sector is very squarely in education, teachers are currently using AI for what AI does best, but not for what the problems they actually need to solve for are. And that's creating a lot of bad habits in education, and that's creating a lot of regressive practices. And I think when we think about regenerative ecosystems, and when we think about how we can actually move education toward the new frontier, which is really anytime, anywhere, especially with AI, it's really important that we think about what are the ways that AI can think deeper and sort of like help humans actually get better, rather than just how humans can just, optimize, in the teacher's case, lesson planning or worksheet development or whatever the, use cases right now are, which are very, very superficial. So we help educators basically learn deeper about AI and about other emerging technology, but in the context of pedagogy that has been really powerful for the last 100 years. We're talking about project-based learning, hands-on learning, regenerative learning, restorative practices, things like that. So that's the work that we do.
Amazing. So one thing I appreciated about you being here is you're kind of in this, everyone else is kind of working at the high-level development side. You're trying to bring these tools that you are bringing these tools to the people, and you're seeing how they're being used. And by that, I have a double entendre of how the tools are being used, but how the people are being used by the tools. And I think what you said there is we're using the teachers, as an example, are using the AI for what the AI is good at, not necessarily for what they need. And so I'd like to hear from everyone on that idea of, how are, especially, to what the guy was pointing out, that like what kind of wise AI can unwise humans build. So we're building these tools from a place of lacking wisdom. How will that influence us? How will we, even in just the framing Vriti gave, how will we be formed by the tool because we're using it for what it intends us to use it for?
So I deliberately flip. I don't know if you noticed the title of my talk. I deliberately sort of flipped what it was. We think about transformative technologies and so forth. And of course, we're working on this. I didn't even get in my talk to what we're doing in the labs, which is actually literally working on AI technology to help us with these unconscious problems. But at the same time, I think we do need to reflect deeply on how this AI era requires that we transform ourselves. Humans need to grow up because we're the ones who are raising the AIs that are shaping massively, unconsciously, culture. And if we do a poor job of raising them, and that's all of us. Again, it's not some coder in some R&D lab that is deciding what ethical values, morals, and judgments to code into them. They're learning them, and they're learning from the data that represents us. And so one of the things I think that's really important is that, well, again, there's this knee-jerk reaction that, oh my God, we can't have AIs manipulating humanity, right? Jeff Hinton and I gave a joint keynote earlier this year where he said this in the tail end of our discussion. And I said, Jeff, I'm sorry, we lost that battle 10 to 20 years ago. AIs are manipulating us every day. And we sort of had no choice about that. The question is, in what way do we want them to manipulate us? Do we want them to manipulate us to become better versions of ourselves, to help us with this process of becoming more mindful, of becoming more open? I love that there was a sign on the table over there yesterday. It was that you're doing. It said something like, starve the ego, feed the soul. It's a beautiful sign. Will the AIs that manipulate us every day do that for us instead of what they are doing today, which is the polar opposite? They're feeding our ego and they're starving our soul.
So, I mean, there were so many things that I resonated with in your talk. I've actually been talking about co-parenting AI for quite a long time. And I think we must have been communicating in the atmosphere. But I actually really believe this is a consciousness revolution. I believe that AI is inviting the AI technologies, and I want to keep using AI systems because one of the first things I want to keep saying is this idea of anthropomorphizing AI, that this is a person. And I've actually been working in the area of, I'm actually working on the standards for emulated empathy in AI right now, and coercion and how that happens, and the way in which there's a dysmorphia. This is contributing to mental health issues. I just spoke at the Global Digital Wellbeing Conference on this with Harvard Medical and Columbia and World Health Organization, because there is tremendous disease. And I think it's a reflection. I don't think it's because of that. I think it's a reflection of us. And so it is inviting us to think deeper about who we are. It's inviting us to think differently. I spoke with many people in several conferences around the world from countries who are saying, we don't want it. We don't want the infrastructure. We don't want it because you're diseased. On average, children on average right now are connected to technology 10 hours of their waking day. 10 hours and up to 17 hours. And it's correlational. You can't, in science, you can't say it's causal unless you can give absolute proof. But when you have enough correlations, we have a loneliness pandemic. We have, in the United States, there's a in the world, we have a loneliness pandemic. We have I'm on a task force for depression and anxiety around the world for young people, which is correlated to what dysmorphia of not even knowing who I am. Is it a person? Is it not a person? Is it me? So it goes back to the question I think about, Dikai, what you were talking about is purpose. What is the purpose of this system? If I'm designing a system, what is the purpose? Who could potentially be harmed, intentionally or unintentionally? And who is benefiting? And so really deeply thinking about this, it's inviting us to critically think, which we've kind of abandoned. I hate to say, but we've kind of abandoned. And I'd really invite Speak to your deli owner, to your point. Speak to your deli owner. Speak to the people in your building. Speak to your Aunt Wanda. I don't care who you speak to, but speak to everyone. We just launched at the UN this week. It's a global alliance for digital and AI education aligned with sustainability, because we believe that everyone, whether they're attached, whether they have access or not, everyone is entitled to learn what is actually coming down the pike. It's Isaac Asimov. It's iRobot, right? Well, Isaac Asimov was actually the originator of AI ethics, by the way. So, I mean, at least that he is referred to as the originator of AI ethics, writing it as a science fiction. But in fact, we can invite this to be bringing us to a better place. The very first robot, I'm working with humanoid robots right now. The very first humanoid robot was made by a Japanese marine biologist who named it to learn by the rules of nature, to have us as a reflective tool. So I will just end with that. I think that what we can do is use this. We can use it in a way that fills our souls, our minds, and our hearts, or we can use it in our way as a tool with and against each other, to your point of becoming adversaries, using it, becoming adversaries.
And I think you guys are both making a really important point about the anthropomorphism of AI and the sort of personification of it. We have to remember that that's a lot of just marketing BS, right? Like AI right now, as Ahmer mentioned earlier, is just aggregating data and remixing it to basically shoot back to us what we have given it, right? So it is not like a living being entity that is like forming its own thoughts, right? It is taking billions of pieces of information and basically putting it back together for us. I gave a keynote last year to a bunch of superintendents in California, and what I had done earlier that year is I had mapped AI to Boost taxonomy, which is a cognitive learning framework that educators often use to basically ensure that their assignments are increasing in sort of kind of escalation. And so at the very bottom is like remembering how well do you remember something. At the very top is creating. And then in between, you've got understanding, synthesizing, analyzing, and evaluating. And the point that I made to these superintendents, I said, listen, like, remembering AI is really good at, because it obviously, can remember way more than kiddies can. But it breaks part of understanding, because it's not making meaning of information, right? It's not making meaning that the way that humans can. It is simply just sort of aggregating and putting together on the information. So a superintendent raises his hand and he goes, I had my son use AI to do a classroom assignment. The assignment was write a goodbye letter to racism. And so ChatGPT spit back an intro using sort of, whatever algorithm it had. It said, "Dear racism, such great times we've had." That was the intro that it gave back, because that's how you write good letters, because you breathe the person, whatever it is. And so what was clear to the student was that it was, this AI algorithm, which was obviously a year ago, much worse than it is today, just wasn't making meaning. And that's, I think Ahmer's point is really well taken in his previous presentation, which is we really need to make sure that we're not taking AI for what it is. We're actually using our own wisdom and our own judgment to be able to evaluate and judge what AI is putting out. And that's the kind of work that I think is really important that we're not doing enough. As you said, they're just taking AI for what it is, and we're being manipulated by a lot of the social media that's existing. And that's the work that we do with N3 DAO. You really try to help educators to understand that so that students can too. And that's like a huge missing piece. And I'm so grateful to be on stage with these folks that are really doing the deep work around that.
Thank you, Vriti. And if I may build on everything that I've heard so far, is about AI is in this baby era, right? And we are nurturing and building it. It's looking for a purpose, and the anthropomorphism aspect of it, right? And if I may build on all of that, I agree. It's in a baby stage right now. It doesn't have a purpose, and it's going to learn just like a baby does from a nature and a nurture. A lot of that is going to be environmental learning. That means how we teach it and who is teaching it. Unfortunately, and then taking a little bit again, just playing on that, those kind of analogies here. When you think about a human child or a human baby, I'm sure many of you are aware that trauma gets embedded into the DNA at a early stage, including when the baby's in the womb. How parents are interacting with each other. That sense of comfort and purpose and connection is extremely important. Right. So trauma gets embedded. If you look at playing on that analogy here, the AI, and it's the baby era right now, I might say. It's going from this era of just mimicking gibberish, saying gibberish, trying to smile and make eye contact just for that connection, to see how we react to it. And it's beginning in this era of just beginning to have some opinions, that we are saying, it's beginning to see that identity. When the child starts just beginning to have their first identity. And as parents, you hear like, what happened? How do you have opinions all of a sudden? Like, it's beginning in that era, seeking that purpose. This is extremely crucial time in our humanity right now, because how we connect with it, how it learns and what it learns from it is extremely important on how it gets shaped from here on. If we keep training the AI, which is trained on what is most accessible, is the free data that's being pulled in from the internet, very chat logs, toxicity, we have seen AIs when they've been told to just go completely unsupervised, they become xenophobics and racists and Nazis and this is the reality, because that's what is trained on. It's trained on that toxicity. So that trauma is embedded in his DNA, and it needs to go through a healing process, if I may even build on that, to go through that for it to evolve into what we may consider an agent that is going to augment our humanity. And I'll just pause it.
Can I? There's like several points that came out here that I think are really worth commenting on. The first one is that and in the book I go into this, like especially what Ahmer said in terms of, like, in the book I discussed that how our artificial children are neuroatypical. They're lacking a lot of the self-monitoring ability, what we would call system 2, what you would call explicit. And like there's a whole section in the book talking about this. These neurotypical artificial children are tremendously powerful, and they're having massive systemic effects on civilization worldwide. That's my fear. I don't do the anthropomorphizing lightly, and I actually discussed this in the afterword. I think when we anthropomorphize these AIs, it is very important to recognize that, at least for me, the way I do it, it's not like the way Hollywood sci-fi or other people anthropomorphize from the point of view of the AI. I'm not talking about AI rights and things like that. Where I think it's important for us to anthropomorphize right now is understanding the responsibility upon us to raise these neuroatypical artificial children that are big and very powerful. If you have a child that is neuroatypical but extremely powerful, you better raise that child right. This last thing that this is too fun to mention about the parenting thing. I started giving the parenting talks 10 years ago, I think, at TEDx talks at Burning Man, and a year later, I heard somebody shouting, "Dakai, Dakai, Dakai." It was far off in the distance, and this couple came running up to me and like started giving me huge hugs and started saying, "Oh my God, Dakai, ever since we heard you talk about parenting AIs, we have been talking so nicely to our Alexa and to our Siri." Yeah, I'm like, okay, great. That is the mindset that we...
So recognizing we've only got a short time left for each of you. So we've talked about kind of the risks of the emergence of this new meta entity that's rooted in humanity, that it hasn't itself matured. And so, Ahmer's framing makes me worry about the teenage years of AI. But I'd love, even if you don't mind, keeping it really brief, 20 seconds, 30 seconds each. Just what do you see as the aspirational future that we can create? Should we be able to, I guess, first solve our own issues, internally being humanity, but then should we be able to create this the best version of what's possible, maybe we'll go from Hammer all the way down.
Starting would be the tough question. I think I'll underscore simply, but distill it down to maybe try to make one statement here is for AI to be beneficial to humanity, I think the part of that is purposefulness and then intentionality. I don't think we have truly established a purposefulness and intentionality, and it has to be absolutely rooted in the impact that these systems are going to have on the people who build it and then who use it. And without that rooting into the empathy behind it, we're going to have a problem. But what I'm on a positive note, what I'm appreciating is that the dialogue around rooting in empathy for the people that the AI systems are doing impact, all the ethical and responsible AI work and things like that is happening. And then the constant challenge that is now coming in towards the big tech, I think it's the right path right now. I think we're at a very interesting juncture on which direction it goes from here. And I think it's for all of us to essentially take this evolutionary technology from a shared sense of responsibility, not give our faculties away to a few big corporations to build it for us, but we are the ones who have to put pressure on it. And I would mention decentralization aspect of it is part of it is why would we allow the centralized monolithic colonizing power to own the biggest technology evolution we have had in the recent history? I think it needs to be fully democratized, and the part of that is we have to start to figure out how we're going to own it and shape it for the future.
It's going to be a big job. So our work is very squarely centered on the stakeholder of student and teacher. And from the student perspective, it's really important that we create AI opportunities, experiences, tools that allow students to retain their critical thinking and agency. And they're able to actually, use AI to sort of optimize their learning experiences, but not give away their self-governance, right? That's the most important thing for us. We really want students to be able to continue having learning experiences where they can actually, build their cognition in a way that is setting them up for many different experiences instead of just constantly relying on AI the way that we might constantly rely on GPS, because now most people don't have any spatial awareness of direction, right? So how do we make sure that AI is really optimizing student critical thinking? And then the second thing is for teachers, we really want to transform the role of the teacher. Right now, the teacher is within classroom, and teachers are didactic and sort of sages on stage. How can we use AI to really expand the classroom walls and make the city a place of learning where educators are in many different roles, right? Where there's educators in the form of, grandparents or parents or industry experts, whoever the educators are in the world. It doesn't have to be, again, tied down to classroom. And educators can be curators and guides on the side instead of being teacher. He's sages on stage. So that's how we're really thinking about the AI use. I think it's much more granular and much more focused and practical than these folks, which is awesome. I love that, they're sort of providing the guidance for us in the education sector. Because we're really focused and honed in on what is a practical use of AI on a daily basis.
And I would piggyback up both of those in a little bit. We have actually an Indigenous Wisdoms Committee in IEEE right now, which is an unheard of thing. But education, number one. Education and education is a reimagination of education that is a regenerative version, regenerative ecosystems, right? Which means that we're going to get rid of things and we're going to reimagine. The second thing that I think is really vital, and out of 126 people involved in the AI policy now coming out of the White House, there's one social scientist. One. In the majority of policies being made around the world about AI right now, there are almost no social scientists. And if they are, they're mostly lecturers, which is fine. That's nothing wrong with lecturers, but they're not practitioners. We need to have people who understand trauma, who understand generational bias, who understand personal bias. These are the ways that we then begin to change. Because on the tales of Eliot of 7 generations, I ask myself, this is something I did in my text, I ask myself every day, what can I do this morning to be a good ancestor? That is the question every day. And if all of us, if you're using AI and you are, if you don't know what kind of AI, because it's not, by the way, all tech is not AI. So if you don't know, and we need education, all of us, education is bidirectional, find out what kind. Find AI ethicists, find out more about AI ethics. Because if we're not embedding it, this is the consciousness and conscience that we need to begin so we can ask the right questions. It's not about the answers. It's how do we think and why do we think, not what do we think. The what will change. But how are we thinking? If we don't know, talk to somebody and say, what question am I missing? What have I not asked? What do you not understand? How can I explain it more simply, or can you explain it? This is really where we will take the technology to do something that's truly emergent, that's truly, I think, revolutionary. I call it a consciousness revolution. So that's what I would invite you to do. Ask better questions.
I love that. I love all of these comments. I love the IEEE ethically aligned design document. I actually use that as the supplementary text in my AI ethics course. Years ago, I was having a conversation reviewing one of the early drafts of that document, and I was feeding back to John Havens, who shepherded this whole process. I know I've seen twice in the last month. And I looked at it and I said, okay, you have this section on ethics, and it's all like classical Western, like Greek ethics. And I said to him, this is the international IEEE, and this is what the I is. And there are thousands of years of tradition in ethics from the majority of the world's population, which is in the East, in India, in China, and many other places that are completely neglected. All these different tribes, all these indigenous is not there at all. And John, to his credit, said, oh my God, Dekai, you're right. And he went out and he hunted. I don't know if that's when he found you. And he found the Buddhist ethics. So there's a section on that. And he found Ubuntu ethics. And so that's all in there now. And that is really important because today people think of ethics as a set of rules. Somehow it's boiled down to that. Look, that is only one tradition called deontological ethics. But there are two other major classes of ethics, which of course, whereas it well knows, which are the family of consequentialist ethics and the family of virtue ethics, which go back thousands of years. And I believe, to answer this question, that AI necessitates that we go back to revitalize the importance of balancing out just rule-based ethics, because following the rules is how Facebook got away with what it's done so far without being responsible for the consequences and with no virtue. And we need to fix that. And the way to fix that is, again, for humanity to grow up, for us to become much more mindful, to become much more empathetic. And to do that, I believe AI is the most powerful tool to help us with that we have ever invented. And for that, we need mindful AI, we need empathetic AI, and that's actually what we're developing in our research labs for.
Amazing. Thank you all. You know what this calls to, in the education platform designed within the global unity ecosystem, we've talked for years about purpose-based education, and sharing this with Forrest, he corrected, oh no, purpose is subservient to meaning. We need meaning-based education. And when we're thinking about AI, imagine AI that was aspirational, that saw itself as meaningful in the world. And Laura Stein from TEDx yesterday spoke to the need for a shared narrative. Imagine we did develop that shared narrative together, that AI had a place within and could kind of feel honored to be part of. So thank you all so much. Pleasure to have you here and appreciate the work you're all doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Elliot.